In the 20th century, command and control, hierarchical management style, middle managers tell people what to do. Middle managers are told what to do by their managers. But in a proper agile structure, agile teams are self organized, they're autonomous, they're able to decide themselves what's the best way to solve problems and accomplish their mission. So, what is a middle manager to do? Well, they need to be the manager of the network flow of information. You've got these teams that are creating all of this output, and that information needs to be shared up the stack, across to other teams, and even across the entire organization. And so it's that networked flow of communication that is a vital part of the health of the business and something that middle management needs to take care of. Hi, Brant Cooper here. I'm fortunate I get to travel around the world speaking with startup founders, investors, ecosystem developers. I've learned a lot in my travels. I've got some stories, and I have some thinking that I love to share. Welcome to Brant's Rant. In truly agile organizations where agile is functioning at the behavior level, that there should be fewer layers. And so middle management will become flatter. But there's still an important role of the middle management, and there's new skills that need to be developed there. Fortunate that through my mentoring at Techstars, I've run across a couple of companies that are working on this type of stuff, and it's from a software tools perspective, but they also realized that they need to further skills of the middle management before the software becomes relevant. So there's a company called Parabol run by Jordan that takes components of Agile and sort of is this how do we formalize some of the process parts of Agile in a way that gets communication better and where the continuous improvement works better. And this is part of the heart of Agile that Alistair talks about, where it's sort of encouraging the behavior that we need to see. And then the other is iMetrics, run by Jeb, and he's really around building trust between the middle management and the Agile teams, and that flows both directions, of course. And so there's skill development that's needed there before actually the software actually takes off, because it's the behavior that is reinforced by the tool, not the other way around. But it's interesting because I do think that it demonstrates part of this trend in this team as the new unit. So what are some of these skills that we're talking about? What is it that the middle management really should be doing? It's more of a coordination aspect, I think. So you've got the teams that are working in a particular way, this agile way, and they're generating output. And the output that they are generating includes not only what they're building, but also what is the impact that it has on the customers, and who else needs to know that information. Well, one layer up, it could be that the different agile teams are working on different components of the same product. Well, so that context needs to be shared with the other teams that are working on that same product. And so that's a layer of dissemination of information that the middle management needs to make sure is happening. It's not that they're a conduit. In other words, it's not that the information flows to them and then they dispense it. But it's a management of that communication flow to ensure that it's happening, and also that those other entities are absorbing that, and that layer of middle management is painting a context that flows back down to those teams so that the individual teams can keep in mind the larger context as they're building their portion. And so there was a story from Spotify that I was told where all of the different groups were working on parts of optimizing the engagement on Spotify, which is a single app, but the experience of Spotify, but that the overall experience was disjointed because there wasn't this context that was being shared. General McChrystal's book, Team of Teams, which I've talked about before, is also an example of where McChrystal had to organize this layer of communications such that all of these different entities knew what each other were doing, because it was vital, and people's lives depended upon that dissemination of information as teams were out doing their engagements. And what's interesting about the Team of Teams example is that was even interdepartmental. So, I mean, that it's like the Marines needing to know what the Army's doing, which needs to know what Special Forces are doing. And these different entities at a higher level, which historically have not communicated greatly, needed to be able to share information. And so that's really sort of in this Agile structure, there's a layer that's above the product layer, which could be a departmental layer. And maybe then there's even a division layer and a business unit layer. So there's these different layers where the communication flow needs to be managed. And I'm not saying that you need a manager of information at each one of those layers, but you need enough of those layers such that the communication flow is happening correctly. And it's happening not only up and then back down, but also across. And it's across the whole organization. And it's not just what the product's being worked on, but it could be any insights that are gained from the customers. And it's success metrics flowing up to leadership, and it's flowing information back down how priorities are maybe changing, or it's part of the awareness aspect that there are environmental changes that affect those teams. And so there's a very complex networked flow of communications that actually needs management. And this is the role of middle management. And it's actually like fundamentally a very crucial role because it's not something that happens organically. So we structurally create these agile teams, but that doesn't mean that the communications flows. And yet the communications flow is absolutely critical. And Agile causes there to be a more decentralized source of information and knowledge. And so then it requires a concerted effort to get that information to flow differently. And it allows a finer control of priorities and of being dynamic, of changing work based upon changing priorities. So if you imagine a hierarchy where everything is flowing typically down into these manager individual relationships, the flow of information is very linear and it's very slow. In a network with digital tools, especially, the flow of information can be networked and very complex in itself. And so what has to happen, I believe, is that there's the required information that is purposely distributed to specific entities. And then there's the opt-in information where people can essentially subscribe to the information that they think their groups will benefit from. And so McChrystal called these operation and intelligence meetings. And there are these corporate examples of this happening that are super interesting, where you have leadership level presentations going on where anybody in the company can opt in and listen to it and actually apply to be heard in a future meeting. So in other words, if you're an agile team that is working on something that needs to be shared broader and people are tracking that information, you actually can then be a participant in even these leadership meetings in order to give updates. And so it's sort of like, I don't know, startup demo days in a way. And there is like a startup analogy in all of this. I always love to use the Techstars emails as an example of a great way to send updates out from the team level to whomever wants to subscribe. And you get top line metrics and you get big wins and you get shout outs, but you also get, here are the obstacles, here are our needs, here's how you can help us. And if you imagine agile teams being able to do that, where stakeholders who are primary are on sort of the must receive list, and then anybody else can opt in where they think that they can benefit from that information. Hey, thanks for listening to Brant's Rant. If we're choosing capitalism here as a society, then let's make it work for a better world. If you'd like to join me as we redefine capitalism for the 21st century, go to beatcoop.co/D4A. Also, if you have a pressing issue that you're facing in your innovation group, your product group, your startup, and want to join me on video, see the link below. Subscribe, like, see you next time.